I do believe that I witnessed the golden age of video games. You know, I started to play with games, well, back in the day, in the early 2000s. And I just saw this entire genre, this entire industry to grow into that multi-billionaire thing what it is today. But on this long journey, that was so many great experiences, so many great games, which is just really hard to list. And the sad part is that for many, many years, I thought that games are never going to be great, you know? That they are just never going to have the same level of magic anymore. And not just because I grew up, but because they don't do that anymore. Because money and monetization became the first focus of every development team. And because of that, it just became worse and worse, year by year. Microtransactions, loot boxes, and other stuff like that, which were not integral part of the gameplay at all, but it was integral part of the monetization tactics. Games started to become less about giving an experience and more about giving a framework for monetization. And, you know, I just thought that, I mean, it was fun until it lasted, but that's it. Why would that change? Why would ever, developer teams and corporations and big companies like that do anything else? Money talks. And yes, a lot of people buying that bullshit. The weirdest, most useless microtransactions, millions of dollars are spent on them. So I just thought that, yeah, it's never going to happen again. But what's annoying for me in this entire time is that brainwashing, that gaslighting, that studios and corporations are told us, to gamers, that why these games are not happening anymore. The answer always was some form of lie. Turn-based games are just not popular anymore. We cannot do them because people not going to play with them. They don't like them. Games have to be more expensive. That is why it's full with microtransactions, because some people just cannot afford $100 games. That is why loot boxes are necessary. And even with that, game prices has to be higher and higher, because otherwise studios cannot afford developing games. We always knew that all of these excuses are lies. But, you know, who am I? I'm just a 90s kid who saw great and even better games in my entire time. And even now, I can just jump back and load back a game from the 90s and have the time of my life. Which nowadays the kids doesn't even know that it exists. You know, I have a personal experience with this. Back in my high school years, I actually never really played with the original Final Fantasy VII. Because even then, it was so old game. It was released in 1997, you know? So, it just wasn't, really interesting for me. If you look at the game, it's just, with a couple of pixels, every character, it's really not some interesting thing for a teenager. Keep in mind that when I was in high school, we already played with Call of Duty Modern Warfare. We already played with Crysis. So, highly detailed photorealistic graphics were available for us. High octane and adrenaline driven gameplay was there, and we were hooked on that. League of Legends just came out and we had the time of our lives. So Final Fantasy VII, the original one, back then for me was pretty similar experience, but it would be for you right now. And you know what? I had a PSP. And the PSP was able to run every single PS1 or PSX game ever. You just, had to had some little bit of magic, with your memory card and such, but you could run any PS1 game on that machine. So, I never played with that legendary game. I heard a lot of really great praises about it. And you know what? I have free time. I'm a high schooler, It sounds interesting, looks interesting. Just put it up. If I don't like it, I can just switch it off and that's it. And yeah, the first half an hour was really, really strange. The characters were so ugly, just like stick figures. and the game mechanics, you know, this turn-based action game. And even then, in the beginning of that game, you really don't even have too much actions. So it was really bare bone and boring. Okay, this is the legendary game. I mean, sure. I mean, back in the day, they didn't really had so high expectations. But the story was something special. And you know, as I played with more and more, I just started to appreciate more the hand-drawn backgrounds. Because yes, these were hand-drawn backgrounds. The music was awesome, and the story, how it unfolded in front of me, the different characters, their interactions, it was completely text-based. It was not voice-acted, but still, it just worked. So, you know, right now I'm playing for the story. The gameplay is not that fun, this turn-based thing is not my thing, but the story is interesting. And I play more and more and more, and the more things are added to that turn-based system, the more spells you can have, the more builds you can have, the more, you know, how you can combine your materia and such, and I just found myself really liking the combat. Then when I was thinking that, okay, this was the finale, the game is over, we are just facing off with the big bad guy, and that's it. I spent approximately 4 and 8 hours on that game at that point. And you know, I just thought that, sure, it was fun, it was interesting. I actually feel much more bigger respect to this genre. But yeah, I mean, that was it. No, that was not it. That was just the first act. And, you know, it was just the storylines in Midgard. And when that story ended, it had a huge plot twist, which I just saw never coming, and then the entire world opened up. Now, I spent this 8 or 10 hours in the city, and from that point on, I can move wherever I want to go. In the entire map, in the entire planet. You know, just breeding chocobos, going to a theme park, just finding different places, finding new people to have quests with and whatever. It's just the entire world opened up in front of me and I was just enchanted. And the more and more I played, the bigger and better the builds came, the things what I can do with my character. The turn-based system became a flow, you know? It had just so many unique interactions, just so many fun things to do during combat that I just realized that, holy shit, I love this game. And yes, it was in the times when I could have played with Crysis, okay, that level graphics. League of Legends to have that level of excitement in multiplayer. And yet, I was there playing with Final Fantasy VII, the 97 release of an ancient game. And I had the time of my life. And from that experience, I did know for 100% certainty that others will have the same experience if they try it out. So I told my friends that, dude, I know it looks really bad, I know it looks really boring, but spend some time with it, okay? If you are playing a couple of hours with it, you will see that this game is just awesome. And a couple of my friends actually did that, you know? It's basically, some of them get completely free because some friends already played with it 10 years ago and they just got a free copy, and, you know, back then trading games were not really penalized or anything like that. Some of us had PS1s, original PS1s as well. So, you know, we just booted up and a couple of my friends started to experience it for themselves. And every one of us, every single one of us had the same experience that, oh my god, this is awesome. That is why I did know, always knew, that when corporations were big publishers told us that, yeah, you don't really want turn-based action games because it's not popular, people wouldn't like it anymore. You don't want games with bad graphics and such. I told them bullshit. Because I just did. I just was their target audience. A teenager with as many hours as you can have and a game addiction. And I actually tried out Final Fantasy and I played with a turn-based RPG instead of an FPS game. Even though I love those games. I love FPS. But Final Fantasy just simply was better. And you know, nowadays, people start to realize that. They actually opening their eyes because games just started to become so freaking expensive. So unimaginable, just burden on you. Because they are just trying to force you to buy microtransactions. That's why they are just elongate the gameplay. They don't want you to have an interesting experience. They don't want you to have, some form of bond with the characters and anything like that. No, no, no. They want you to spend as much time possible with the game so that you are much more likely to buy microtransactions. That's it. That's the main goal. And, having a great experience, having a great story, and having, just an engraved memory is just a secondary side effect. If it happens, that's great, but otherwise, who cares? The publisher don't. So, that is why I thought that the age of gaming is over. Because why would this change? And then, in the past 1.5 years, something shifted. And I think it's because that corporations became so greedy that people just started to do what I did back in high school. They just booted up old games. And now, Oblivion Remastered is out. And everybody who did not try it out before, now they can experience the same thing and they can see the same thing what we told them all the time. Just because a game is ugly, it's not necessarily means bad. It might be even better than everything on the market right now. And yes, they tried out and they have the time of their lives with it. And there are so many other games which you never played, and you should, even right now. You shouldn't look that how the graphics aged and such, because that doesn't matter. It's still an awesome experience. And yes, a lot of people started to have that. A lot of people started to realize that, and most people started to not give money to corporations. No, we will not buy games for $80, and we will never buy games for $100. And even if there is an exception, for example, if right now the new GTA will be a $100 game and a lot of people will buy it, that's not going to be an industry standard. That's going to be a one-off. Because most people just open their eyes. We have at least 20 years of backlog of awesome games. We don't have to buy your corporate shit. And we just don't. And that's awesome. Ubisoft just closed because the exact things what we just talked about. In my childhood, Splinter Cell games were my favorite. The first Assassin's Creed and many great titles what they had. They were my childhood heroes, and where are they now? They just released the same thing, the same mechanics, the same elongated framework for microtransactions over and over again. With no heart, with no soul, just, rolling it out. You deserve every punishment what the market is giving to you. And it's not just Ubisoft. Many other corporations like that, who were, in my childhood, were the real heroes, are now the villain. But, from their ashes, the new phoenix is rising up. Expedition 33. A $50 games, not 60, 50, and not 80, 50, right? It just had a sale. You could buy Expedition 33 for $40. Significantly better experience, significantly better story, insane graphics, right? And it's a turn-based RPG. And I must say it's going to be the best game of the year. Well, I would be really surprised if it isn't. So, what the hell are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about when you told us for 20 years after Final Fantasy that, yeah, we don't do games like this anymore because people don't like turn-based RPGs anymore? Bullshit. I played them as a high schooler. 10 years after their release. Or even more. It was 20. Maybe 20, yeah. 97, dude. So no. When it was that phrase, you think you do, but you don't. You know who said that? Blizzard. When people ask them over and over again that is there going to be legacy servers, vanilla WoW. We want to play vanilla World of Warcraft. And Blizzard, what did Blizzard say to their own customers? You think you do, but you don't. You think you do want to play with vanilla WoW, but you don't. No. And they realized that when they actually released vanilla World of Warcraft servers, then they themselves had to acknowledge that, yeah, you know what? We were wrong. People actually do want to play with that. Yes, we always knew that, and you always knew that deep inside. But the money, you know, the dollar bills which were rotating in your eyes just blinded you. Because yes, you cannot ask $70 for vanilla World of Warcraft. It's just not going to happen. But you can ask for a subscription, you know, or something like that. You cannot sell Oblivion for $80, but you can sell it for 40, 50. I would say that some would even buy it for 60. So, you see, just because you want to sell a game for 70 or 80 or $90, that's why you're not making these. But you know what? We are not going to buy it. How's that? And the gaming world is going to be a better place because of that. It already is. Larian, you know, with Baldur's Gate 3, just started to shoot up like a shooting star and give hope for everyone that yes, games can be better. They can be other than just money-grabbing machines. And now here's Expedition 33 and other Schedule 1 and other things like that. Now we are living in an age when one single person can give better gaming experience than a AAA studio. You don't need high budget. You don't need hundreds of people to work on it. You need passion, you need vision, and you need to have some form of artistic merit. And the will to make a good game. That's it. You don't need money. And if you just do that, money is going to come to you. Because you are going to sell a great experience. And that's what has a market value right now. Okay, I mean, thank you. I wanted to say that, and that was my video recording. And I just